weather was nice, so after lunch, I headed out into the courtyard. More than anyone else, I hoped to run into Takuya. I understood his outlook on the world the moment I learned of his condition. Plus, it was kind of cute, seeing how hard he tried to hide the way he felt. The fondness I felt for him was like that for a younger brother. At some point, I'd realized we had a special bond. There was a sense of solidarity, knowing that we were both waiting on a transplant for an otherwise incurable disease. I said I wanted to say that the things I told him the day before, that was just by searching for an ideal. That was just me searching for an ideal, something to live up to. I wasn't philosophical. I wasn't enlightened. I just wanted to be honest about how hard it was every day. Surely he would understand. But I didn't see Takuya in the courtyard that afternoon. I made small talk with several other patients like I usually did, then headed back to my room. Takuya didn't turn up the next day either, nor the day after that. I would look up at his window from the courtyard, but I never saw him. Where was he? Had his condition taken a turn for the worse? Was he no longer well enough to go outside? I had never been to the second floor where his room was, but I knew the first floor was enough that I could guess the layout well enough to avoid getting lost. With that in mind, I decided to pay Takuya a visit. I went up to the second floor, walking slowly as I eyed the nameplates for the rooms alongside the courtyard side. There, right about where I expected it to be, I found it. Takuya Kazama. I'd been afraid that his nameplate had been removed. If it hadn't been there, that would have meant he'd been discharged. That his room had been swapped for some reason. Or else. As I was about to knock, a voice called out from behind me.
Kyle?
Miss Endo?
I turned around to see an unfamiliar nurse standing there. Perhaps she was in charge of the ward or had seen me walking around before, and that was how I knew her name. Yes? I asked.
Were you looking for Takuya?
Yeah. I hadn't seen him in a while, so I was wondering.
I'm sorry. Takuya wants to get more out. Takuya wants to. He's not in any shape to be moving around much. We're worried about infection as well, so we limited his visitors. You probably shouldn't be wandering this far yourself.
The nurse pointedly pulled the sliding door to Takuya's room closed. If I could just see him real quick.
No.
The nurse snapped. Then hurriedly cleared her throat and spoke more softly.
You wouldn't want his condition to get worse.
I saw that I'd have to back down. I returned obediently to my own ward. But I had a hard time accepting the fact that I couldn't visit Takuya. Does that nurse have some kind of grudge against me? Not only does she know my name, and know about my condition, she must also know that I've been talking with Takuya in the courtyard. Does she think I'm the reason his condition has gotten worse? I knew that his health wasn't as good as he might have claimed, but I felt a little guilty that I hadn't been as considerate as I perhaps should have. After that, whenever I went out for a walk, I made a point of swinging by Takuya's room, asking several nurses and doctors about his condition. They would always say that he was doing fine, but staunchly refused to let me see him. Is he maybe already... I couldn't help but imagine the worst. Is everyone just working together to keep me in the dark? But why would they do that? Do they think I'm his girlfriend and they're trying to keep me from the shock of finding out or something? No, that was ridiculous. Besides, this was a hospital. I knew full that they didn't have the time to put on some weird piece of theater after a patient has passed away. There must be some other reason. Some reason they don't want us to see each other. Willing to do whatever I could to discover that reason. I tried changing the time of day that I stopped by Takuya's room. Maybe if nobody was watching, I'd be able to sneak a peek inside. If someone happened to be coming or going, I might even be able to get a look at his face. But I'd never imagined the way I'd finally wind up seeing him again. On that day, I had been hiding behind one of the heated meal carts used for delivering dinner to the patients. She followed the orderlies as they brought the cart towards Takuya's room. They have to open his door in order to bring his tray inside. But before I reached his room, the door swung forcefully open, and a bed was swiftly pushed from inside. Doctors and nurses, their faces pale, ushered it along. Pushing the meal cart out of the way as they raced down the corridor. Takuya laid on the bed, his eyes closed, his face severely jaundiced. He didn't appear to be conscious. Takuya! I cried out without thinking. One of the nurses glanced back at me briefly before disappearing from sight with the others as they brought the bed into the elevator. Takuya! As I stood there, dumbstruck, my eyes strayed to the open door to his room. With shaky footsteps, I went inside. Takuya's room was largely the same as my own. There was a locker by the entrance, along with a small refrigerator. Over by the window was a TV stand. Next to that was a bookshelf packed with books. I picked up one of the books atop the bedside table. It was a beginner's primer on topics such as organ transplantation and brain death. On the bookshelf were other, more difficult-looking medical volumes, intended for experts. Takuya's been studying up on diseases? I wonder if he's been holed up in here reading these the whole time. Maybe he overdone it studying. That would be a cruel irony. I prayed to a god I had never before believed in. Please. Save him.
I blearily opened my eyes. This wasn't my room. An artificial respirator was put over my nose and mouth. A set of tubes ran between my body and a hemofiltration machine. Model curtains enclosed the area around my bed. I was in the ICU. Several people bustled frantically about. Last thing I remember was being in my room. Was that minutes ago? It hasn't been days. Excuse me, could someone... pause. My voice didn't even sound like my own. Nurse Ellis.
Doctor, he's regained consciousness.
At that, the face of my attending physician, Dr. Chiaki, suddenly came into view. He was wearing an operating mask. Dr. Frank.
Takuya? Please, hang in there. Takuya!
It sounded like my father and mother were there, on the other side of the curtain. And the staff had caught him here. Did that mean I was on the brink? What day is it? Doctor.
What was that?
The respirator was making my voice hard to understand. I struggled to form the words. Today. What day is it?
It's April 5th.
April 5th. There's still over 3 weeks to go until my 15th birthday. What was going on? It's too late to save me, isn't it?
You mustn't say things like that.
How much longer do I have? Will I make it another month? Saki lowered his eyes. No guarantees then. Please, doctor. I just need 3 more weeks. Please do whatever you can to let me live for just 3 more weeks. I can't die yet. Dr. Psyche nodded, a thoughtful look on his face. Is there something you can do? Please. I don't want to die yet. I haven't done anything yet. Please. Just a little more time.
There is a life-prolonging procedure. Highly experimental. However,
I don't care about the risk. I just don't want to die yet.
there's something called an artificial liver system. Clinical trials have only just been concluded in Japan. It's a device that uses cells harvested from pigs. If things go well, rather than just 3 weeks, it might be possible to keep you alive until a donor turns up.
The measure in pig cells was startling. But right now was no time to be squeamish. Please, doctor. If there's even the slightest chance. It's worth it.
After Takuya was rushed to the ICU, I went to check up on him every day without regard for my own well-being. Day after day I visited, only to be told that he was still in an unconscious state. 3 weeks went by without a change. Then one morning, while passing by the kitchenette on her way to the ICU, I overheard some nurses talking.
Carl.
Did you hear? Taki has regained consciousness.
Alice.
For better or for worse. Poor kid. He keeps saying that he doesn't want to die yet. That he wants to live. He's only what, 14?
The young nurse's voice was tearful. I felt a new kind of pain in my chest.
He's running out of time for a transplant. With that rare blood type.
Rare blood type? I stopped in my tracks, then rushed back to the kitchenette. Excuse me. What do you mean by rare blood type? The moment she saw me, the nurse clammed up and tried to slip away. Please, hold on. The rare blood type. Is it Bombay? I shouted. The nurses exchanged an awkward look with one another, and though neither of them said anything, I knew that I was right. Takuya has Bombay blood too. This was a hospital with high-end facilities that drew patients with incurable diseases from all over the country. So maybe it wasn't such a remarkable coincidence. Transfusions for rare blood types such as Bombay were difficult to come by at regional hospitals. There were some advantages to having another such patient on hand nearby. But there were downsides too. Now the inexplicable behavior of the doctors and nurses made sense. They'd been trying to keep me and Takuya from each discovering that the other had Bombay blood. It was unsettling enough to know that someone else with a blood type only possessed by a few dozen other people in all of Japan was hospitalized right alongside you. But when both of you were waiting for... But when both of us were waiting for compatible donors in the hope of receiving a transplant, that was enough to upset anyone's composure. How must Takuya have felt when I told him that I had Bombay blood as well? If he dies, I could live. Something like that must have crossed his mind. The fact that he started studying up about transplants again must mean he'd been thinking of something. What in the world was he thinking? If our positions were reversed, what would I have done? I knew what I had to do. I headed for the ICU. I got there just as Dr. Psyche, who was my own attending physician as well, emerged from inside.
Miss Endo.
The doctor stopped, surprised. I drew myself upright and looked him right in the eye. Doctor, please use my liver for a transplant for Takuya. You can perform a living liver transplant, right? If you need to take half or even 2/3 of it, then please, by all means. For a moment, Dr. Saiki looked as if he'd taken a punch to the face.
You heard about the blood.
I nodded.
I'm afraid that won't be possible. A living liver transplant is dangerous enough for a healthy person. Someone in your condition would never be able to tolerate the surgery.
You can do it when my time comes then, I said.
Regardless, Miss Endo, I can't carry out a living liver transplant between complete strangers. The law doesn't allow it. If the two of you got married, that would be a different story. But that's not possible either. Neither you nor Takuya can legally marry until you're 18.
Married? I had never thought about such a thing. Even if marrying Takuya would make the surgery possible, I'd do whatever it took. But apparently the law wasn't going to allow for that either. Well, I don't care what the law says. If I'm the only person who can save Takuya, then please take my liver. Doctor, please.
I'm afraid what you're asking simply can't be done. You need to focus on your own condition and on getting better yourself.
I'm beyond saving anyway, though. Right? So please, I'm begging you. Takuya needs. As I grabbed hold of the doctor's gown, bleeding, a sharp pain shot through my chest. The galloping heartbeat was back. No, my pulse had never been quite this erratic before. My mouth opened and closed reflexively. I was unable to breathe. Doctor! But please! An electrical shock went through me from the implanted defibrillator. The world faded as I slowly collapsed to the floor. I had a long, long dream. My father was in that dream, and though I couldn't clearly remember my face, and though I couldn't clearly remember her face, my late mother was there too, trying desperately to save me. And then there was Takuya. Takuya was smiling. A genuine smile. A smile that I had never seen. Takuya's mouth was moving, but no sound came out. I tried to read his lips. Thank you. Thank you? Wait, what do you mean? I cried out as I woke. I was staring up at a familiar ceiling. I was back in my own room. I spotted my older brother Achi sleeping in a folding chair nearby. Achi. The word creaked raspily from my throat.
Panda, are you there? Nolan, play Achi.
Huh? Suzune? You awake?
My brother rose from the chair, then excitedly scampered out of the room. With a start, I realized something was attached to my chest. I felt a peculiar sensation. 6 distinct tingles, all running from the center to the left side of my chest. Electrocardiograph electrodes. I followed the leads that ran from my chest to the monitor by my pillow, and was surprised to see the waveform moving across it. It was my pulse. And amazingly, the rhythm was solid and strong. Nothing like the one I'd been familiar with for so long. No. That's not my pulse. I realized what I was seeing. I understood instinctively. This heart. It was Takuya's. Achi returned with Dr. Saiki, who proceeded to check the various monitoring devices by the bed, nodding and smiling with satisfaction.
It's good to see you awake again. For now, there don't appear to be any signs of rejection. Of course, we'll need to be vigilant, but this new heart seems to be a good match for you, Miss Endo.
It's Takuya's, isn't it? Please tell me it's not. I told you I wanted him to have my liver. Takuya was dead. If I had his heart now, there was no way he was still alive. Dr. Saiki looked away, and for a while he said nothing.
When it comes to who your donor is, I'm not at liberty to say anything. You understand that, right? So instead, let me tell you how things went for Takuya in the end. You two, you were friends. Boyfriend and girlfriend, maybe? Either way, you have a right to know about his passing.
Takuya's passing. I had already imagined as much, but now I couldn't hold back the tears. Takuya's dead. He's dead. Dr. Saiki went on.
Takuya begged me to help keep him alive just a little bit longer. His family agreed, and so we proceeded with an artificial liver system, a treatment that's relatively untested here in Japan. For a while, his symptoms abated. He even regained consciousness.
The doctor took a breath.
But it was already too late. He lapsed into a coma due to acute liver failure. Then he developed complications, a condition known as DIC, which causes clotting in blood vessels throughout the body. Initially, we thought he might have hepatic encephalopathy, but a CT scan of the head revealed cerebral edema. He was declared brain dead 2 days after his birthday. He was 15 years old.
Dr. Saiki gave me a significant look. I wondered what that implied.
He was insistent that he make it to 15.
Saiki continued.
He said there was something he absolutely needed to do. On his birthday, he called for his family and told them, "I want to register as an organ donor."
Huh?
Here in Japan, individuals under 15 years of age aren't allowed to give consent for organ donation. If Takuya had died before he turned 15, then his heart, all of his organs rather, could not have been provided to a patient in need. And that was something he wished for very much.
Takuya had been reading up and studying. And he learned that he needed to survive until he turned 15. And he asked for life-prolonging measures to be taken. Also that he could register as a donor in order to give me his heart.
And I don't know who it was, but apparently a surgeon was able to perform a transplant for a patient believed to be an ideal match for his heart. Evidently, this patient was also comatose and in an extremely dire state. But from what I hear, the surgery seems to have gone quite well. Of course, I do not know the identity of the patient either.
I strained to move my right hand, sending it atop to my chest. Underneath the layers of the bandages, I could feel a heartbeat, steady and strong. Takuya's heart is beating within me.
He left a letter for you. I haven't looked at what's inside, so I'm not sure what it says.
Dr. Saiki set a white envelope down on the bedside table, then left the room. Achi. Read it to me? I didn't feel strong enough to read it myself. But I didn't want to wait.
Nolan.
You sure?
Achi asked.
All right then. Let's see.
Achi opened the envelope, slid the letter out, and began to read.
Suzune, if you're reading this letter, that means everything has gone well. Congratulations. And also, thank you. Ever since I became sick, no, even before then, I hadn't known what it was like to be happy. I hated the world. I went through my whole life just thinking about how pointless my existence was. As an excuse for a human being with no reason to live, what did it matter if I was here or not? I hated that I was going to die so young. But at the same time, it seems pointless to try to live any longer. And then I met you. I fell in love. With you. I love you, Suzune. With all my heart. With you in this world, I wanted to go on living a little longer because living would actually have some meaning. When I found out that we had the same blood, I was shocked. It had to be fate. Right? Neither of us was going to be able to survive on our own, but if one of us sacrificed ourselves for the other could go on living. And I wouldn't be able to bear any world without you in it, Suzune. The answer was clear. I want you to have my heart, Suzune. That's the best possible thing for both of us. You're probably a little sad knowing that I'm gone now. I'll be happy if that's the case. Please be happy for me, now that my heart is inside of you. That would make me even happier than anything. Thank you so much for taking my heart. It'll beat for you as hard as it can, I hope. I wish we could have talked more. If it had only been possible, I would have liked to have gone somewhere with you. But it's okay. This way I get to be with you forever. I won't be lonely anymore. Goodbye. I'm looking forward to our future together. Takuyo Zuma. Sama.
Achi's voice grew gradually more hoarse as he read. By the end, he was struggling not to weep. I was more astounded than I was sad. Of course I was upset that Takuya had died. And I was glad that I was going to live. But above all, I was But above all, I was amazed by the fact that Takuya had cared for me as much as he had. That he'd fought so hard to prolong his own life just to save mine. That moved me more deeply than anything I'd ever known. Maybe a young crush couldn't be called real love. But that didn't make it any less pure. Thank you. Goodbye, and I'm looking forward to our future together.
Have you seen this part?
I don't think so.
Maria, go ahead.
Kanan had blood on her hands from the time she was a little girl. A walking contradiction of cruelty and childishness. And yet, she had lived her life according to her own unshakable beliefs. Meeting her had made me think hard about my own identity.
We've seen this.
Oh, okay, you're right. Go ahead.
My anger dissipated like smoke in a sudden wind. The tension seeped from my body, and I carefully lowered the gun.
What's the matter?
Alphard smirked.
Why won't you shoot?
Her eyes blazed with contempt for my naivete. No. I'm not being naive, I told myself. Do unto others as they have done to you. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. What does this recurring pattern of retribution really accomplish? It's just an endless cycle of hatred. That's why I'm not going to fight. Because I'm not like Kanan. Tears flooded from my eyes. I'm not like Kanan. But people who are different can still be friends. And I'm going to honor our friendship by not taking revenge. No matter what happens, I'm not going to hurt anyone, I said. Maybe that's not very realistic, but this is my fight, and I'll fight the way I choose. I wiped away my tears. For the first time, I felt that I understood Kanan. If I'd been able to see her just one more time, I would have to be able to speak my mind without fear. I could show Kanan the true me. And maybe then, we would be friends for real. That wasn't going to happen. Not anymore. I handed the gun to Tatano, then looked up at the nighttime sky. In the distance, I could faintly hear the sound of police sirens. Not one star could be seen in the sky over Shibuya. A black car of foreign make arrived at the laboratory and pulled up to the curb. Stanley's superior, Gordon, emerged from the back. A few of his men followed and promptly placed Alphard in handcuffs.
Go ahead, Frank.
Well done.
Gordon said. Stanley gave him a slight nod.
I'll be taking Alphard back to headquarters. You can finish up here.
Understood, sir.
Gordon shoved Alphard into the back seat and slid in alongside her. Ooh. And the car drove off. Yeah.
Nolan, deep voice.
Who was that just now?
Tatano asks Stanley.
My boss. Sorry, but we'll be taking Alphard into custody.
You will, huh?
Tatano frowned, but decided not to press the point. They'd put a stop to Alfred's plan, and they had saved my life. That was enough for him. Maybe it even began to atone for what he'd done to Hitomi.
Go ahead, Nolan.
Kano. Suzune. Chone. I pictured all of their faces. Perhaps in the end, I've managed to become worthy of their respect.
It's all over. Wait, do I speak for that?
It's you now.
I spoke under my breath. My gaze locked in the car, taking Alphard away. The black cloud that hung over my head had yet to lift. But I knew that today was the day I could finally put revenge aside. No longer would memories of my brother bring only sorrow. This'll do. You want a Frank?
Maria.
Abruptly, Maria's cell phone rang in my pocket. That's right. I meant to give this back to you. I handed the phone to Maria.
I wonder who's calling.
Maria picked it up. She could hardly believe it when she heard the voice on the line. Brusque yet girlish, with a daredevil ring. A voice that had been burned into her mind since the day she met its owner.
No. It can't be.
She had been sure she'd never hear that voice again. In an instant, Maria's face was damp with tears of joy.
Thank goodness! Oh, thank goodness! Kanan.
Maria couldn't hold back her sobs. The tears kept coming and coming. She had never wept with joy like this in her life. Few seconds.
Nolan.
I held my breath. I could no longer feel the seconds ticking by. The numbers on the display were changing more and more slowly. But still I watched in fear. 2 seconds. It was impossible not to fixate on the countdown. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Kano and I continued to stare at the timer. 2 seconds. It had stopped. The timer had actually stopped. We did it! I dropped to my knees with a cry of triumph. The rest of Shibuya Scramble burst into cheers.
You're one reckless guy, you know that?
Kano held his hand out. I grinned up at him. That makes 2 of us. Our 2 hands clasped firmly. Our handshake conveying more than words could have.
Is this Suzune?
Hitomi.
Achi!
Oh, whoops.
Achi!
Susumu came rushing over.
You did it, man. I knew you could do it.
The two of us bumped fists. Huh, it weren't just me, I said. Could never have done it without your guys' help. Susumu smiled bashfully. Hey, Susumu. Take care of SOS for me.
You got it.
Susumu looked me squarely in the eye. He gave a little nod. And we solemnly bumped fists again. Suddenly there was a blinding flash. I spun around to see Chiaki standing there beaming happily, her digital camera ready for another shot. Hey everyone, gather up! Minorikawa called out to me and my pals. You guys are the heroes of Shibuya!
Photo time, everyone!
Chiaki said.
Get ready!
The young men struck a pose together. Wait, her too. Minorikawa ushered Hitomi over to stand with me. Hey, Hitomi. I flashed her a sheepish grin. It was all thanks to Hitomi that I'd been able to do what I had done. Keeping Shibuya safe. Keeping my promise to Suzune. Hitomi had been my inspiration for it all. There were so many things I wanted to say, but I couldn't get the right words out.
Achi.
Hitomi's cheeks were damp with tears. Hey now, young lady! Minorikawa called. No crying now! Come on, show us a smile. I struck a he struck a goofy pose beside Chiaki. At last, a smile returned to Hitomi's face. Really is the best. Hitomi looked up at me in confusion. Her smile. It's the best. I don't care what anyone else says. I spoke so earnestly that Hitomi couldn't help but smile even more.
Okay, here we go, people! Get your best faces on!
Okay, here we go. Here we go, people. Get your best faces on. I mean, Minorikawa signal. Everyone let a joyous victory cry.
Come on, guys.
Susumu shouted.
Let's lift Achi up where everyone can see him.
The members of SOS let out another roar. Huh? No, you don't gotta do that, guys. Hey, cut it out! But I had already been swallowed by the enthusiastic throng.
Heave-ho!
Heave-ho.
That's you, Achi.
There in the middle of the scramble, I was being hailed as a hero. Tano looked on with a satisfied smile.
Wait, it's my turn. What we had achieved together was nothing less than a miracle. I'd taken a lot of luck, more than a few coincidences, but for us to stop the bomb. Coincidences? I muttered to myself. No, that wasn't right. This was something different altogether. Fate. That's what it was. Not just one person's fate. The destinies of several people had collided, gathering momentum until coincidence became an inevitability, and Shibuya was saved. The raucous crowd tossed Achi high into the air again and again. As a plainclothes detective, I would probably never be showered adulation quite like that. Well, that was alright. Detective duty was to ensure the safety of the people. I didn't put my life on the line so that I could be a hero. Just seeing all those smiles, that was good enough for me. I only needed approval of one person, and that was Rumi. Hope she managed to get out of Shibuya okay. Suddenly worried, I pulled out my cell phone. There's a whole bunch of things I wanted to tell her. I couldn't share the whole story, police rules wouldn't allow it, but I wanted to let her know as much as I could. That the kidnapping case had been resolved safely, for instance. That I learned about the tortured past of the detective I so admired. That my partner was going to pull through. That I would manage to finally talk to her father. That I put my life on the line to save Shibuya from danger. Rumi would listen quietly at the very end, and then I thought, I knew just what she would say. Short and sweet, in that gentle voice of hers.
Good job.
Ruby? Hello? There was no response. Do we have a bad connection? Hello? Rumi, are you there? Can you hear me? Look, the case is closed now. You're still somewhere close to Shibuya. I would love to see you, if I can.
Is this the dad?
Yes.
You want to see me, huh? Don't you have a mountain of paperwork you should be doing first?
Gruff voice was Shuzeo. Oh, well, you see, Father, I
told you not to call me that.
Shuzeo barked so loudly over the phone that my ear rang. Right, no, of course. Yes, I'll do my job. I just wanted to check and make sure that Rumi was alright.
Looks like I misjudged you. Maybe you are the kind of guy who'll blow off work to go meet with a girl.
I was gone.
Dad, hey!
I heard Rumi's voice cry out with exasperation.
Come on, let me have my phone.
I know that work is important, sir, I said hurriedly, but Rumi's even more important to me. I felt my panic rising. With all that happened, no one wants Shuzeo to end up with a bad impression.
Oh, be quiet. If you want to see Rumi, you can do it once you've finished your work.
Well, but I'm not sure when that's gonna be.
I waited on you today a lot longer than I wanted. So at this point, I don't care how long it takes you. We can wait all night if we have to.
Shuzeo let out a peculiar sigh.
And then, you and I can talk again about you marrying my daughter.
Huh? Before I could be sure I heard that right, Shuzeo hung up. Huh? What? stare at the phone, my mind reeling. And then, I was hit with a veritable explosion of joy. Yes! I leapt into the air and shouted with delight, my voice echoing through the Shibuya streets.
Still me?
Yeah.
Once the crowd put me back down on my feet, I rushed over to Hitomi. So, Hitomi.
Yes?
Hitomi, there's so much stuff I want to talk to you about. So many things I want to tell you. I gazed into her face. But, Suzune, I didn't know how to continue. Hitomi smiled warmly. She understood.
Go on, Achi. Go see your sister. There's nobody here in trouble that you need to rescue now.
Thank you. I better get going then. See Suzune. I broke away from my circle of friends and headed out onto the Shibuya Scramble. Strangely enough, my leg didn't hurt too much now. Despite all that had happened, I felt invigorated, as if I was just walking to a brand new day.
Achi!
Hitomi called after me.
I will see you again. Won't I?
I nodded vigorously. Of course! Just come to Shibuya. You'll find me. I'm born and raised in Shibuya, but after today, I love the place more than ever.
Alphard sat in the back seat as the car sped along the highway. Here. Tossed the handcuff key onto the seat beside myself.
What happened down at the Scramble?
Alphard asked, picking up the key and unlocking her cuffs. Leland Palmer was arrested by the Japanese police. And the bomb in the attaché case was defused, apparently. Still, Palmer shouldn't pose a problem once we get him into CIA custody.
I see. Much obliged.
You really got yourself backed into a corner, though, didn't you? I said.
Yeah. I was only able to accomplish half of what I intended.
Half. Alphard produced a vial from her pocket. It was filled with red liquid. Is that Hitomi's blood? I asked.
Indeed. I managed to acquire the antiviral.
But when? I peered at her in bewilderment.
When I blew up the minivan.
In the dim light of the vehicle, Alfred's eyes shone darkly, like those of a wounded animal. Extracting the blood from Hitomi while she was unconscious had been a simple matter. Saving the girl's life had just been more than just a means of ensuring her trust. Alphard had been looking for the right moment to carry out the extraction. Total secrecy was essential. If it became public knowledge that the drug existed, and that some of it had been stolen, the value of the UA virus would plummet. Our primary objective here was to destroy that research facility. Still, getting our hands on the antiviral is better than nothing. Well done, as always, Alphard.
お前はまだ復讐を考えているな。
パスコードが変えられている。
解放戦線を裏切ったのか。
目的となる貨物車両を3両目。警報は解除したんじゃないのか。
定か、そちらの進行は。
潜入経路に問題はない。みんな黙らせていいんだよ。
彼女の専門は暗号破り。
それ以外に理由はない。
から待て。
渋谷の文字はお前とは相性が悪いみたいだ。
Alice.
The snake has lost 8 of its 9 heads. In the Middle East, the snake is seen as an ill omen, and those who take it as their name are said to be both wicked and extremely cunning. If I give in to sentimentality, I will have lost my light all over again. The blue sun rose into the sky. As I rushed through the airport, I was met with the intense light of the summery dawn. I let out a weary breath. A shaft of sunlight blazed across my face, and I squinted my eyes against the glare. The night had been a long one, and I could feel exhaustion taking me. I wanted to stop and sink into one of the sofas in the airport lounge, but I didn't have time for that now.
こっちのは陽動か。惜しげもなく捨て駒にしやがって。何様のつもりだ。
Who the hell does she think she is, just tossing people away like that?
末端組織の一つや二つ。あいつにはハルワーみたいなものってことか。
Nothing more than Alphard to her? Muttering curses that seemed at odds with my young face, I wove my way gracefully through the sea of traps. Time was of the essence. All I had in my hidden back pocket were some dollar bills. I was just going to have to acquire the gear I needed on site. Galled me to be so under-equipped. The only consolation was that at least I'd been able to arrange for a boarding pass in time.
あるあにさ。
I refocused instantly as an unfamiliar man addressed me in Arabic. Was he a thief, or some more dangerous third party? This was a country where both one's money and one's life could easily be at risk. I had one way to find out what kind of threat I was dealing with.
日本行きの便はどれ?
Which gate is the flight to Japan? My voice was sweet and girlishly soft. The man gasped. He hadn't been expecting this. They hadn't told him what he was really in for. I was the natural enemy of the Serpent, a steely soldier in a proxy war. A professional freelancer who took any requests and who always carried out her mission. A mere hour earlier, I'd taken out an armed syndicate 30 members strong. The red flowers of blood left in my wake, a testament to my rumored capabilities. The man was dumbstruck. What kind of twisted fairy tale was this with mercenaries who looked like sweet little girls? What's wrong? Were you not able to make the arrangements?
いや、搭乗は6番ゲートから。パスとチケットなら。
He said hurriedly.
Nolan, go ahead.
The flight is departing from Gate 6. If you're looking for your pass and your ticket...
They're in my right pocket. That was impressive. I didn't notice you'd already handed them off. The man gasped in. His surprise shifted to caution. With all the bystanders around, it should have been easy enough to make a handoff without even the recipient ever noticing. He was proud of his skills, but still, I'd seen right through him.
落ち込まなくていいよ。
Don't feel
あな
bad.
た、
At
入
least
り
I
口
didn't
で
spot
電
it
話
in
をしていた人でしょ。
advance.
私はあなただって分かってた
You're the
の
man
に。
I spoke to on the phone
渡されるまで
outside,
気づ
right?
かなかった。
I asked.
それってすごいことだ。
That was quite the feat.
私、あんまり人
I
は
don't
尊
offer
敬
praise
しないん
like
だけ
this
ど、
lightly, but I'm
あなたに
legitimately
は本当に
impressed. She's known since the moment I arrived. And I hadn't figured it out from his appearance. I just intuited it somehow. I'd also immediately sensed that he was ashamed, even though he'd kept his face a perfect blank.
恐れ入った。蛇の天敵というのは間違いではなさ
Nicely
そうだ。
done. You see why they call you the natural enemy of the serpent.
一度も殺してないのに天
That
敵ってい
seems a
うの
little
はす
premature,
ごく皮
seeing
肉
as how
だ。
I haven't killed it yet. First, I acted deliberately blasé. Now I was being downright cynical. She's alone and stable. And totally adorable. He had to remind himself that this was me. How many soldiers must I have killed? How many battlefields had I survived? Mine was the life of a professional assassin. The fact that I had retained apparent normalcy in the midst of such disorder was more than a little unsettling. The man was astonished that this was the famed rival of the serpent. One did not strike at the snake without exceptional cunning and skill. Mine was the perfect camouflage. A mercenary in the guise of a child.
まあそれで
So long as
話
we're
の
on
裏
the
を
same
取れた。
page. Did you look into that story I asked you about?
あ、確認は取った。
Yes, I was able to confirm it.
所長大沢の
The
娘は
director of Okoshi
確かに
Pharmaceutical,
誘拐されている。
Osawa, his daughter, has indeed been kidnapped.
こちらのセルの活発化は何らかの陽動と見るべきだ。
We should consider the increase in cell activity on our end be a mere diversion.
I gritted my teeth. My latest mission, concluded just an hour ago, had been to meet with this armed group, the Serpent. That was fine. Everything had gone off splendidly, without a hitch. The job had been even easier than I'd imagined. There was no cause to get bent out of shape. But the info I'd gotten my hands on had done quite a number of them. The Serpent herself is on the move. Japan, Shibuya, Okoshi Pharmaceutical, possible CIA involvement, presumed large-scale urban terrorism at work. That message had lifted the veil from my eyes. At long last, Alphard herself was out in the open, the head of the snake exposed. What a perfect opportunity to cut it off. But of all places to set the stage, Japan? CIA involvement could pose a problem. Wouldn't be surprised if the Serpent had already coiled itself around the Americans. When it comes to the Serpent, not even the US government can be trusted to keep itself free of influence. And the target was Okoshi Pharmaceutical. If that wasn't a sign, I didn't know what was. that just a coincidence? No. Allah was Al-Qadir, all-powerful. But I frowned in disappointment. What need would he have to go so far to pen such a perfect tale? I had thought such grand acts of fate were a relic of the distant past. But I could sense its hand in these events. I hurried to get the intel confirmed at once and had quickly arranged a flight to Japan. Maybe I was a freelancer, not aligned with any particular organization, but I still had connections. I had many tools in my arsenal. People were often the most convenient. If they excelled at what they did, so much the better. Many individuals sought to curry my favor. Sympathizers, like the man who made the handoff here, would intervene on my behalf.
ありがとう。
Thank you.
じゃあ行くけど、他に
Is
何
there
か言
anything
われ
else
て
you
る？
need to tell me before I go?
現地に一人ワキールを用意した。
A wakil has been arranged to act as your representative on site.
渋谷への足を用意しているそうだ。
Apparently, he's put together a way to get you to
貨物室から
Shibuya.
降りられるように
After you've landed,
滑走
drop
路か
out
ら
of the
直接
hold.
ハイヤーを飛ばす。
be able to head off directly from the runway.
The man said.
ああ、無駄足にならないよう祈って
I pray this will not be a fool's errand. For
思い
your
のほ
sake.
か、ラフィーク・カ
I
ナは
admit that our
我ら
spices
のアニールから
are
高い信頼
Amir
と敬愛を受
holds
けている。
such respect and fondness for you, Fik Kanan.
今回は最悪、痛み分け
He
でいい
hopes
そ
that
う
you will not fail, of course. What should you do that you will at least go down fighting?
I sighed. Go down fighting? So it's okay to die as long as I take the target down with me. The man thought of nothing but his honor, his pride. No reconciliation, no negotiation, no submission. 3 tenets that mattered more than preventing bloodshed. Whatever designs these two organizations had on each other were of no concern to me. But even so,
言われなくても、
I don't need the warning.
3度目なんて死んでも
I
ご
have
め
no
んだ。
intention of dying a third time. For once, my client's wishes aligned perfectly with my own. My flaxen hair trailed behind me as I went to board my plane. I didn't regret. The flight from Singapore to Japan was roughly 7 hours. The serpent had surely anticipated that her enemy would pursue her there. In all likelihood, there would be a minimal window between my arrival in Japan and the serpent's plan coming to fruition.
ほんと、少年が
She
腐って
really
る。
does love sinking to new lows. The serpent wouldn't be so clumsy as to let someone come from back home in the Middle East, especially a foe like me, find out about this by accident. If she let the plan leak, that meant it suited her purposes somehow. It would seem she wanted to entice me to risk hope before trampling me underfoot. You won't lay a finger on me. The voice sneered at me, a backstage murmur in my mind. I dealt with the enemy's diversion, learned of the plan just in the nick of time, and rushed off to Japan without a second's hesitation. Japan was where it would all be decided. If I didn't do battle with the serpent, I would lose yet another close friend. Had the serpent engineered the situation simply to torment me?
けど、今回は少し予定が違う。
But things aren't gonna go how you think this time.
渋谷の文字は、お前とは
Shibuya
相
is
性
a
が悪
poor
いみたい
fit
だ。
for you. I spoke to myself to calm my gnawing impatience. The time it took to write Shibuya and the time it took to write Alphard were nearly the same. But the youthful and complex nature of the city of Shibuya won out. My instincts were something akin to fortune telling, a tendency to reimagine the world around me in a way that was neither wishful thinking nor sour grapes. I had a sense of conviction that hovered near the truth. But I knew I couldn't let myself be optimistic. The serpent possessed a powerful venom. It was possible that even if Alphard's plan were foiled, the life I hoped to save would still be lost. There truly was no time to spare. Crushing the fringe group in Singapore had gone more quickly than I'd anticipated. I planned on obliterating them at the break of dawn, but I'd been struck by a sudden familiar sense of urgency and had acted an hour ahead of schedule. That change of plans had led to this. I'd obtained the intel just slightly earlier than Alphard might have anticipated, and I'd put speed above all else in arranging the trip to Japan. Right now, I could only hope that the single hour I'd bought myself would let me to save my friend's life.
Maria.
Maria. Maria. A warm red flooded my mind. We'd met 2 years ago. I remember the day as an ordinary one. An unassuming tourist was getting hassled by the same sorts of guys that cause trouble all over the world. My stash of my favorite snack had just run out, and it left me in an irritable mood. Maybe that was why I'd stopped to the site of the scuttle. Not that I had any interest in helping. Men just gave off an eyesore of color. Their scent was far too noisy, and I wanted to be rid of them.
Shukran. Oh.
Wait, yeah, go ahead.
Let's see. Okay. Shukran jazilan,
said the grateful tourist, her hand outstretched. She asked if I would be her guide, which I tried to ignore, but she persisted. This girl was a person raised in peace, from a peaceful country. I wasn't the kind to hold it against her or rail against the unfairness of the world. It didn't mean I wanted to put up with it either. A Yanbaniya like her was practically a different species. How could we even understand each other? I was closer to an animal myself, and respectable people didn't get close to animals that were still untamed. Humans had overcome their feral side. They'd become creatures of intellect. When such intellect was fostered over years, the benefits were clear. And yet...
それじゃあサディークになるってのどうかな?
Let's be friends. Sadiki, how about it?
This tourist approached me oblivious. I could recall the warm color from that moment. It still triggered my memory. It was a pleasant color, one I'd been touched by before. This tourist, Maria, was not so remarkable as to draw the eye. Nothing about her seemed especially worthy of admiration. There was just something special about the wholesome smile she offered to the dangerous creature that she should never have approached.
そっか、天然なんだ、あなた。
Spontaneous, aren't you? I smiled. There was something powerful about people who couldn't get a read on their own situation. It was the first time I'd smiled earnestly in a long while. The first time since I'd lost my light a second time. It would still be several hours before the plane landed in Japan. I did my best to ease my inner tension, to let myself rest in preparation for combat. My orders were simple. Save my friend, capture the serpent. The objective was the same as it had been before. That summer 4 years ago, when I'd gotten the tattoo on my left arm. That very long day when I'd been reborn as the Canaan I was now. tunnel sank. A dangerous blue and gentle red. Painful yellow. Those, the colors of many people aboard the trains that sheltered them. The train had set out from Alphard, northwest of Baghdad. And after a journey of 300 kilometers, it was approaching Jordan. At the front of the train was an antique diesel locomotive. This is followed by first-class carriages, coach-class carriages, and also several of the women-only carriages, unique to the Middle East. It was a long train, not exceptionalism. Remarkable that there was a line running between Iraq and Jordan. Traffic between the two countries, especially via railway, had been drastically reduced as a result of the war. Many of the lines had long since fallen into disuse. But now that the West was working towards the reconstruction and stabilization of Iraq, Japan had also helped plan a railway between Iraq and Jordan, and that had laid down a temporary rail line. The train's final stop was not the border, but 300 kilometers beyond it, in Amman, the Jordan capital. This trip would be a turning point. Sundown would see the venerable old train's service empty. The compartment where Baghdad was boisterous with noise and human energy. Wind and the sound of chugging wheels rushed in together through the windows of the glass. As the only rail service currently linking Iraq and Jordan, the new line drew passengers from all walks of life. A freelance journalist returning from Baghdad, an Indian pilot carrying a piece of luggage larger than himself, a group of women who appeared to be members of some Scandinavian NGO. No one seemed bothered by the clamor. The passengers shouted and prattled on as they passed. Various sounds, miscellaneous colors, profuse scents, myriad textures, manifold flavors. All of these sensations mixed together as if in a stew pot, and I gulped them down. Yet the stimulation they provided was weak. It was like lamb without enough salt. So I reached into my pocket for a dose of my favorite pick-me-up, crunching it between my teeth. It was in a fountain. I was on this train to do a job, but nothing had happened for 3 hours now. So far the journey had proceeded without incident. I had no opportunity to act. Saeed, the man she called Sharik, had assigned him this mission. They were trafficked. Theirs was a rarity. No longer were they Mudarib and Mutatar, master and student. Still, this was a complete letdown. The atmosphere on the train set me on edge. Despite the instability of present-day Iraq, there were no soldiers aboard, only several policemen. Supposedly, this limitation of the military presence was all out of concern for the complicated political situation. But I couldn't help but wonder if it was more of a concern for saving money on soldiers' pay. The major powers touted peace while enforcing virtue, when they could be bothered. This railway was just one more example of their dubious policies, supposedly established to help foster interpersonal exchange and economic revitalization. It had originally been used for military transport until public travel was more useful for somebody's agenda.
退屈。善意の国際協力ってものが本当にあるなんて思ってもみなかった。これの持ち主はよっぽど平和で幸せなんだな、ジャム。
Whoever owns this outfit has grown fat on peace.
ひねくれているな。善意の第三者は信用ならないか、かな。
Don't be so cynical.
My companion said.
Do you really distrust the intentions of others so much?
別に信用なんてシャムしかできない。そういうのが相手なら仕事はいつも楽だろうなって思っただけ。嫌ってるわけじゃない。
I'm not mad or...
結構襟好みがないのはいいことだ。
A good thing not being too particular.
だが善意と私欲どちらが
Just
クリ
keep
ア
in
するか
mind
は
that whether
仕
we
事の
align
内容
with
による。
the good guys or the bad guys depends on the job.
善意には損得がない分、人間らしい交渉が通じない。それはそれで厄介だ。
So-called virtue has no value unless it provides some real benefit to somebody. Otherwise, it's just a bother.
Virtue is just another name individuals gave to their own biased sense of justice. A rigid and fanatical concept subject to any number of arbitrary beliefs. One man's virtue is another man's depravity. The very idea made me think of those interminable meetings between political figures. People puffed themselves up as wise and sat at the conference table with the slightest interest in the other side's values. To them, all that mattered was what they had already decided was good and right.
損得がないね。
Some real benefit
どう
to
すれば利
somebody,
益が出るのか、どうすれ
so
ば
they
生き
know
残
how
れ
to
るか分か
profit,
ってるの
how
に
to
目先の
survive,
お
but
金に
still
は転ば
manage
ない
to
って
not
こ
go for the money that's right under their noses.
と？もっと派手に人生そのものをつま
Can
ずき
someone
続ける？
really keep living their life like that without eventually stumbling?
客観的に見れば
You need to look at things objectively.
安酒のようなものだ。
A simple moral philosophy is like cheap booze. It's easy to get your hands on and easily makes you sick.
泥酔している人間に話し合い
You
を
can't
したい
expect to get through to someone who's
説
dead
得するより
drunk.
先に
Before you
もし
can
あらぬ
convince
ことで
them of your
酒を飲まな
point,
きゃならない
you need to beat the alcohol out of them.
例えば眉間を秒速で打
Like
ち抜
by
いて
up and putting a bullet between their eyes?
ああまあ頭にアルコールが詰まっている
Perhaps,
かは
if
疑
it's the
問だ
brain that's drunk.
The man named Sam curled up the corners of his mouth. Though he wasn't a fundamentalist Muslim, he still detested alcohol as a tool of the devil. But his use of booze as a metaphor now was inspired less by his inner demons than by his unique sense of humor.
もう笑わない方がいいって言
He
っ
just
たの
stopped
に。
smiling.
シャム笑うと顔が怖いん
Makes
だ
you
か
look
ら。
creepy. Harsh, yes, but needed to be said. Sam's smile was a rare bird newly come to roost. We'd known each other for several years now. Back in the day, I'd never known him to smile. As a change of habit, it felt unsettlingly like a sort of surprising.
知っているそう忠告されて以来
I know.
務めている
I've been trying my best not to ever since you first gave me that bit of advice.
まあ俺たちの雇い主は苦行を美
Anyway,
徳としている
our employer values
笑わないと
austerity.
いうのは方針に合って
Not
いる
smiling ought to be our general policy.
Me, myself, I was equally guilty of a rare display. My own sour expression had completely turned around. The only time I expressed human-like joy was when Siam and I were alone together. My name was Kanan. Trained by Siam, a veteran mercenary, I just turned 14 years old. That was not my real name, but a nickname given to me 2 years prior. Mine was a familiar story, that of a child who lost her parents and her village to the ravages of war. Unlike most who shared such a beginning, however, I'd had 2 major strokes of luck. The first was the ability I had been born with. The second was that I'd met someone who taught me how to foster that ability. As a girl orphaned by war, I'd almost inevitably taken up arms. Making myself useful to the powers that surrounded me had been the only way to survive. The only people I could depend on, the only ones who gave me anything, were them. The moment I didn't meet their expectations, I'd go back to being a mere orphan. And so, this girl, a victim of war, fell under the protection of the warmongers, and I was trained to be one of their soldiers. But then, I was picked up by a man, Siam, who freed me from those who robbed me of my path. He had no ideology. He was unlike the others I'd known in my broken world. The wandering people who formed a new nation to be their promised land. The ones they had driven out, and the wanderers themselves who styled themselves liberators. Siam was a mercenary who'd been hired by those would-be liberators, but he paid no heed to the ideologies of either side. He was a soldier who lived to fight, knowing he was unlikely to see the conflict's end during his lifetime. I didn't know how long Siam had been working as a mercenary. By the time I'd wound up in his care, he was already a veteran worthy of my confidence. He told me he'd been kicked out of the army, but he preferred solo missions where he could focus on his objective without worrying about fellow officers. In that sense, he was something closer to an agent provocateur than an ordinary person. Siam was well aware of his distinct style of position. He sometimes revealed a hint of shame at the fact that the assignments he was given were not officially mission, Mohima, but instead referred to as jobs, Emma. Still, he was known as a valuable asset on the Liberation Front. They were a guerrilla organization, facing off against superior Israeli forces. A lone mercenary who could carry out major operations by himself, he had fit well within the guerrilla strategy. The fact that he was disposable if and when the time came was also quite appealing. And me, once Siam took me in, I had grown not as a soldier, but as a specialized covert operative. That was my good fortune. My talents weren't particularly well suited to acting as part of the unit. I was far better at being a solo diversionist, acting against the enemy organization. And so I'd ceased to be a soldier, instead training as a diversionist. I fulfilled my new role. Siam and I, we worked in concert as secret agents, infiltrating, gathering intel, conducting sabotage. I learned to operate without backup. Typically, one of the duo would sneak into enemy territory alone, while the other acted in the logistics or liaison. Here and now, however, with our objective aboard this new train, responding to an urgent request from our employer, we were working together as a team.
でも列車で輸送するってそんなに大きなものなの？今回のは。
The objective must be something big, right?
いや、物自体は個人で所有できる大きさらしい。
No. What we're after is apparently small enough to be carried on one's person.
中身は俺たちの管轄ではない。
We're not authorized to look at the contents. First task is simply to confirm whether it's really on board or not.
なんだ、それならもう終わりだ。私とシャムで見て回ったんだから間違いないよ。この列車は外れ。どこをどう見ても普通の車両だし、お菓子の手触りもなし。輸送の予定が1日ずれたか、こっちの動きが漏れたか。そもそも初めからそんな計画はなかったってとこじゃない？
いや、今回の情報に限って空振りはない。信用できる
No,
提供者。
the intel's solid. I trust the person who provided it.
We'd received the intelligence just 2 days prior. Even by our own fast-moving standards, this job was inordinately rushed. A member of American military deployed in Iraq has contacted a Mossad agent. Indications suggest plan to deliver and hand over weapons. Board Iraq-Jordan Railway and gather intel. Recover payload if possible. Destroy if not. Weapon to be transferred, enemy escort, and loadout all unknown. No logistical support will be provided during operation. It was uncertain why the enemy had chosen to move the mystery weapon along such a dangerous overland route, but the information came from a source that both Siam and the Liberation Front trusted absolutely. And the source had made it clear that the enemy forces were in a hurry to transfer this new unknown weapon. This was a tip that the Liberation Front could not overlook, and they directed Siam to act immediately. The situation was somewhat delicate. the enemy had decided to use a train that crossed the border as their means of transport. Given the tenuous political balance in the region, the Liberation Front couldn't risk open military action targeting an international train running from Iraq to Jordan. Political pressure from Israel and the US might have led Jordanian government to give tacit consent to a weapons transfer. But if the freedom fighters intervened on a large scale, it would surely invite a military response. Worst case, things might spiral out of control and trigger yet another full-scale war in the Middle East. Thus, the job at hand required utmost secrecy. The enemy would disavow involvement in any clandestine transport, and those who moved against them must be similarly able to deny any involvement. Stopping and destroying the secret payload was a job for covert agents. And so Siam and I had hurriedly boarded the train, where we'd been spending our time staring out the window. 4 hours had passed without any incident aboard. Now we were arriving at the halfway point in our journey, the Jordanian border.